Welcome to History Teller YT, where the past comes alive and stories of human ambition, ingenuity, and courage are revealed. Today, we embark on a journey across mountains, deserts, and centuries to explore one of humanity's greatest achievements, the Great Wall of China. Stretching over 13,000 miles, the wall is more than stone and earth. It is the story of empires, warriors, and ordinary people who poured sweat, blood, and spirit into building a structure that would stand for millennia. From the first walls of the Qin dynasty to the towering fortifications of the Ming, from fierce battles against invaders to the legends, myths, and cultural inspirations it left behind, the wall is a testament to the endurance of human vision. In this documentary, we will explore how it was built, the hardships faced by its builders, the military strategies that shaped it, and the lasting influence it has on culture, literature, and the modern world. So settle in, and let History Teller YT guide you through a story of ambition, sacrifice, and the indomitable human spirit. A story that begins stone by stone and spans centuries of history. Long before the stones, bricks, and watchtowers stretched across the mountains of northern China, there was only open land, vast plains kissed by winds that carried both trade and terror. Ancient China was a cluster of warring states, each small, proud, and vulnerable. Nomadic tribes from the north, particularly the Xiongnu, swept through the borderlands like storms, raiding villages, stealing livestock, and threatening kingdoms. These invasions weren't just battles of swords and arrows. They were struggles for identity, for survival, for control over what it meant to be China. The rulers of these early kingdoms had no united defense. Some built small ramparts of packed earth to mark their borders. Others dug trenches or posted scatter guards. But these were temporary, fragile, and easily destroyed. As time passed, one ruler began to see the need for something far greater, a vision that would echo through the ages. His name was Ming Jiangnu, later known as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. When Qin Shi Huang conquered the rival states in 221 BCE, he didn't just want to unite their lands. He wanted to protect them. From his throne in the newly established Qin Empire, he looked to the north and saw danger. He saw nomads waiting beyond the deserts and mountains, waiting for weakness. So, he issued an order that would change human history, the building of a wall, not one, but a network of walls linked together like a stone dragon crawling over the ridges of northern China. The early versions were crude, piles of earth, tamped and compacted between wooden frames. But they were monumental for their time, stretching across thousands of kilometers. And in this grand design lay the seed of something eternal. The Great Wall of China, not just as a defense, but as a symbol of unity born from fear. Long before the stones, bricks, and watchtowers stretched across the mountains of northern China, there was only open land, vast plains kissed by winds that carried both trade and terror. Ancient China was a cluster of warring states, each small, proud, and vulnerable. Nomadic tribes from the north, particularly the Xiongnu, swept through the borderlands like storms, raiding villages, stealing livestock, and threatening kingdoms. These invasions weren't just battles of swords and arrows. They were struggles for identity, for survival, for control over what it meant to be China. The rulers of these early kingdoms had no united defense. Some built small ramparts of packed earth to mark their borders. Others dug trenches or posted scatter guards. But these were temporary, fragile, and easily destroyed. As time passed, one ruler began to see the need for something far greater, a vision that would echo through the ages. His name was Ming Jiangnu, later known as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. When Qin Shi Huang conquered the rival states in 221 BCE, he didn't just want to unite their lands. He wanted to protect them. From his throne in the newly established Qin Empire, he looked to the north and saw danger. He saw nomads waiting beyond the deserts and mountains, waiting for weakness. So, he issued an order that would change human history: the building of a wall. Not one, but a network of walls, linked together like a stone dragon crawling over the ridges of northern China. The early versions were crude, piles of earth, tamped and compacted between wooden frames. But they were monumental for their time, stretching across thousands of kilometers. And in this grand design lay the seed of something eternal: the Great Wall of China, not just as a defense, but as a symbol of unity born from fear. Imagine the scene: thousands of laborers stretching as far as the eye can see, the clang of hammers against stone echoing through the valleys, dust clouds rising under the burning sun. The emperor's decree had transformed the northern frontier into a living construction site. Farmers, prisoners, soldiers, and slaves were all conscripted to build what the emperor had envisioned. Some were forced to leave their families behind for years. Many would never return. The Qin dynasty's wall wasn't a single continuous structure. Instead, it linked pre-existing fortifications built by previous states, Zhao, Yin, and Qin, into one connected defense line. Using local materials, workers built with what they had. In the mountains, they stacked stones. In the plains, they pressed earth. In the deserts, they mixed sand and reeds. It was a masterpiece of adaptation and suffering. Historical records claim that hundreds of thousands of workers died during the construction, either from exhaustion, starvation, or harsh punishment. Their bodies, it's said, became part of the wall itself, buried within its foundations, though this may be more legend than truth. Still, the myth reveals how the Great Wall was built not only with soil and rock, but also with human life. Qin Shi Huang inspected the progress with his imperial entourage, proud yet paranoid. He believed the wall would make his empire eternal, untouchable. But walls, no matter how high or long, cannot stop time. After his death in 210 BCE, rebellion tore through his empire. The Qin dynasty collapsed, leaving behind fragments of the wall, battered but standing, silent witnesses to ambition and tragedy. And yet, the dream did not die. The wall had become more than a structure. It had become an idea. Future dynasties would rebuild it, extend it, and reshape it. The Great Wall was no longer just a barrier. It was China's mirror, reflecting the power and fears of each era that touched it. In the centuries following the fall of the Qin dynasty, China entered an era of change. The Han dynasty rose to power and inherited not just an empire, but also the broken bones of Qin's dream. The Han emperors understood what the wall represented. Not only protection, but prestige. A strong wall meant a strong empire. And so, they began to restore and expand it, reinforcing the northern borders against the relentless nomads who continued to raid and challenge their might. But this time, something new emerged. Culture and myth began to intertwine with stone. Stories spread of ghosts haunting the construction sites, of families weeping for loved ones lost in the wilderness. Among these tales, one stands out above all others: the legend of Meng Jiangnu. She was said to be a woman whose husband was taken to labor on the wall. When she learned of his death, she traveled across mountains to bring him warm clothes, only to find he had perished. Her cries were so powerful that part of the wall collapsed, revealing his body. Whether myth or truth, her story represents the human heart behind the Great Wall. The tears hidden beneath the stones, the cost of empire carved into history. While emperors saw the wall as strength, the people often saw it as sorrow. Each dynasty that came after, Sui, Tang, Song, would rebuild or abandon sections depending on their needs, their politics, their pride. Over time, the wall began to take on new meanings. It was no longer just a defense. It was the boundary between civilization and wilderness, between order and chaos. It marked where China ended and the unknown began. And as the centuries turned, new rulers would rise who saw the wall not just as a line of defense, but as a statement to the world, a monument to Chinese endurance itself. The Great Wall was still young in history, but its legend was already immortal. The fall of the Qin dynasty left behind chaos, warlords battling for control, rebels rising against imperial tyranny, and borders collapsing into uncertainty. Yet from this storm came a new power, the Han Dynasty. Established in 206 BCE by Liu Bang, who became Emperor Gaozu of Han, the dynasty aimed not just to restore order, but to redefine the Chinese empire itself. The Great Wall, neglected and broken in many places, stood as both a reminder of the past and a challenge for the future. For Emperor Gaozu, rebuilding the wall was not simply about defense. It was about legitimacy. The early Han rulers inherited the Qin's fear of the northern tribes, especially the Xiongnu, a confederation of fierce horsemen who could appear and vanish like desert storms. Their raids on Chinese settlements disrupted trade and threatened imperial authority. The Han court realized that a secure frontier was essential for survival, and that meant the wall had to live again. The reconstruction began slowly. Unlike the Qin, who relied on sheer force and mass conscription, the Han took a more strategic approach. They repaired key stretches of the wall in the northern provinces, especially near the Heshi Corridor, a vital route connecting China to Central Asia. This corridor would later become the eastern gateway to the Silk Road, the artery of trade and culture that would bind east and west for centuries. The Han engineers introduced improved designs, tamped earth reinforced with wooden frames, signal towers spaced more efficiently for faster communication, and fortified outposts that doubled as small garrisons. Beacon fires could now send warnings across hundreds of kilometers within hours. It was no longer just a wall. It was a living defense system breathing with the pulse of the empire. But rebuilding came with a heavy cost. Thousands still labored in harsh conditions. Many died in the deserts of Gansu or froze in the mountains of the north. Yet despite the suffering, there was pride. For the first time, the wall wasn't just seen as a monument of tyranny, but as a symbol of collective endurance, a structure that carried both the emperor's authority and the people's spirit. The Han rulers soon realized that walls alone could not stop a determined enemy. The Xiongnu, masters of horseback warfare, had no fixed cities to siege, no farmland to capture. They were the wind, swift, unpredictable, and ruthless. Their cavalry could cross open land faster than any Chinese army, raiding villages and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. To counter them, Emperor Gaozu initially tried diplomacy. He sent envoys, offered gifts, and even arranged a hachin, a peace marriage between a Han princess and a Xiongnu chieftain. In return, the Xiongnu were expected to respect the borders and stop the raids. For a time, it worked. Trade flourished and tensions cooled. But peace bought with gifts is fragile. When Emperor Wu of Han came to power in 141 BCE, he took a different stance. Known for his ambition and military brilliance, Emperor Wu decided that the empire would no longer bow to nomadic threats. He launched massive campaigns to push the Xiongnu back into the northern steppes. These wars were brutal and costly, but marked the beginning of China's transformation into a regional superpower. During this period, the Great Wall became not just a defense line, but a launch point for military expansion. Garrisons along the wall served as staging areas for campaigns, supply depots, and communication posts. The wall's watchtowers, lit with fire signals, became a heartbeat of war. Soldiers stationed in the lonely outposts watched both sky and sand, waiting for the signal that could mean life or death. As the Han armies pushed further north, they extended the wall deeper into the deserts and mountain passes. The Yimingwan Jade Gate Pass and Yangguan Pass were established as key outposts, gateways through which silk, spices, and ideas flowed westward. Through these passes, the Great Wall began to transcend its purpose as a barrier and became a bridge, connecting civilizations rather than merely dividing them. The Han's victories against the Xiongnu cemented their legacy as one of China's most powerful dynasties. Yet every victory came with its shadow. The wall expanded, but so did the empire's exhaustion. What had once been a defense had now become a burden that needed endless men and money to maintain. As the wars settled into uneasy peace, something extraordinary happened. The same paths that soldiers once marched now began to echo with the steps of merchants and travelers. The Silk Road was born, a vast network of trade routes connecting China with the distant lands of India, Persia, and even the Roman Empire. And standing guard over this artery of exchange was the Great Wall. Under the Han Dynasty, the wall's purpose subtly shifted. No longer only a military line, it became a corridor of culture, economy, and diplomacy. Caravan routes snaked alongside its fortresses, carrying silk, jade, spices, and stories. The wall's watchtowers, once symbols of isolation, now guided traders and ambassadors through the empire's northern gateways. At Dunhuang, murals and carvings from this era reveal a flourishing frontier. Monks, soldiers, merchants, and nomads coexisting in a strange but vibrant harmony. The wall didn't just keep enemies out, it controlled the flow of ideas and goods. The emperor could tax traders, regulate movements, and project power far beyond the capital. But the same roads that brought wealth also brought risk. Bandits roamed the deserts, and corruption seeped into outposts. Many sections of the wall fell into neglect when funds ran short or governors grew complacent. Still, the wall endured. Its very existence told the world that China's northern frontier was no longer a wild border, but an imperial horizon. By the end of the Han Dynasty, the Great Wall stretched farther than ever before, a network of fortifications, signal towers, and gates that spanned the mountains and deserts like a great stone thread sewing civilization together. The empire's strength would eventually wane, and the wall would again crumble in places, but its idea, the dream of a border that could hold both danger and destiny, remained alive. The Great Wall had become more than a construction. It was now a lifeline between the earth and sky, between war and peace, between the heart of China and the edge of the world. When a mighty Han dynasty finally fell, in 220 CE, China once again descended into disunity. Civil wars tore the land apart, and rival warlords carved the empire into fragments. This was the time of the Three Kingdoms, followed by the chaotic 16 kingdoms and northern and southern dynasties. Amid this storm of shifting power, the Great Wall, that silent witness of dynasties, began to crumble. Without a strong central government, maintaining the wall became nearly impossible. Fortresses were abandoned, garrisons deserted, and the once proud signal towers sank into sand and soil. The nomadic tribes of the north, such as the Xianbei, Rouran, and later the Turks, swept through the frontiers with ease, exploiting China's divisions. The walls that had once symbolized unity now stood as relics of a forgotten dream. Yet not all rulers ignored it. In the north, several non-Han Chinese kingdoms, those established by nomadic tribes who had once been enemies of the empire, began to adopt the wall's concept themselves. They realized its strategic value not only for defense, but also for administration. By controlling mountain passes and old wall routes, they could regulate trade and migration, securing their fragile states. But the wall was no longer the grand serpent of stone it had been. Nature reclaimed much of it. Winds from the Gobi Desert eroded the earthen ramparts. Rain washed away the foundations. And in remote valleys, shepherds grazed their flocks over buried fortifications. The wall had fallen silent, its purpose blurred in an age of confusion. Yet, within this silence lay memory. Scholars and poets of later generations would look back at this era and see the ruins not as failure, but as endurance, proof that even when empires fall, the stones of their labor remain. The Great Wall, though wounded, waited. For centuries it would sleep beneath the dust, until the rise of new rulers who would once again breathe ambition into its bones be by the 4th and 5th centuries. Northern China had become a land ruled by people who had once been outsiders. The Xinbei, one of the tribes that had long roamed beyond the wall, rose to dominance and established the Northern Wei dynasty, 386 to 534 CE. What made the Northern Wei unique was their transformation from fierce steppe warriors into rulers who embraced Chinese civilization, governance, and culture. They understood that to rule China, they had to protect it, not just from external threats, but from the chaos within. The wall once again entered imperial plans. The Northern Wei rulers initiated repairs and expansions, especially in the Shaanxi and Inner Mongolia regions, where frontier conflicts were fiercest. Unlike their predecessors, they combined military pragmatism with cultural policy. They fortified the wall, but also built frontier towns, promoting trade and integration with nomadic tribes. Rather than viewing the wall only as separation, they saw it as a negotiation line, a border where war and peace could coexist. Their construction methods reflected the technology of the time, earth tamped tightly between layers of gravel and reed, reinforced by wooden stakes. Although these fortifications lacked the grandeur of later brick-built Ming walls, they served their purpose well. Soldiers stationed there became part of border communities, intermarrying with locals and creating a unique frontier culture, half Chinese, half steppe-born. Yet the Northern Wei, too, faced internal strife. Power struggles, rebellions, and court intrigues weakened their empire. As their dynasty split and gave rise to successor states, the maintenance of the wall once again faltered. By the time the Sui dynasty rose in 581 CE, the wall stood as a patchwork of memories, some sections buried in sand, others still guarding lonely ridges against an endless horizon. Even so, the idea of the Great Wall, the dream of an unbroken line defending civilization, persisted like an ember in the dark. The next dynasty would fan that ember into flame once more. When Emperor Wen of Sui unified China in 589 CE after centuries of division, he faced a nation weary of war but hungry for renewal. His reign marked a rebirth of roads, canals, bureaucracy, and yes, the Great Wall. The Sui dynasty was short-lived, lasting only a few decades, but in that brief time, it achieved monumental feats of engineering that astonished the ancient world. The Sui rulers understood that unity demanded protection. The empire's northern borders were still threatened by powerful nomadic confederations, such as the Tujia Turks. Emperor Wen and his successor, Emperor Yang, ordered massive wall-building projects to secure the empire's frontiers and project imperial might. Historical records describe tens of thousands of laborers mobilized for these undertakings. Unlike the scattered efforts of previous centuries, the Sui aimed to link existing sections into a coherent defensive chain stretching across Shaanxi, Gansu, and parts of Inner Mongolia. New walls, watchtowers, and fortresses were built with speed and determination. But with ambition came cruelty. The Sui emperors demanded near-impossible schedules, forcing laborers to work through blazing summers and freezing winters. Supplies ran thin, and rebellions sparked across the empire. In many ways, the wall's reconstruction mirrored the Qin's tragedy, immense in scale, brutal in cost. Emperor Yang, obsessed with grandeur, continued these massive works even as his people suffered. He extended canals, built palaces, and strengthened the wall, believing it would secure his name for eternity. Instead, it drained the empire's strength. By 618 CE, revolts erupted everywhere, and the Sui dynasty collapsed under its own weight. Yet the legacy of the Sui's ambition did not vanish. Their efforts paved the way for one of China's greatest eras, the Tang dynasty. The wall would soon take on a new role, not as a fortress of fear, but as a witness to a golden age of culture, trade, and diplomacy. In its stones lay the memory of both suffering and greatness, a reminder that empires may rise and fall, but the wall, patient and eternal, endures them all. When the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, rose from the ashes of the fallen Sui, China entered one of the brightest ages in its history. This was an era of poetry, art, and innovation, where the capital city, Chang'an, became the world's largest metropolis, glowing with lanterns, music, and ideas from every corner of the known world. The Tang rulers, particularly Emperor Taizong and Emperor Xuanzong, presided over a civilization that seemed invincible. But even in this age of cultural brilliance, the old threats from the north never truly vanished. Beyond the empire's borders, the Turkic Khanates, fierce and organized, watched the flourishing Chinese heartland with hungry eyes. The Tang emperors knew that a golden age could only endure if its borders were secure. And thus, the Great Wall, though no longer the endless construction site it once was, remained a vital thread in the empire's defense and identity. Unlike the Qin or Sui, the Tang rulers did not pour all their resources into massive wall-building campaigns. Instead, they relied on strategy and diplomacy. They forged alliances with nomadic tribes, used marriage treaties, and created buffer states to control the steppes. Where possible, they restored and repaired strategic sections of the wall, particularly near the Ordo's Loop and the Hushi Corridor, areas that guarded the empire's western approaches. Under the Tang, the wall evolved into something more than a military boundary. It became a symbolic frontier, marking the edge of civilization, yet serving as a bridge for trade and cultural exchange. Caravans from Persia, Arabia, India, and even Byzantium traveled through its gates. Buddhist monks journeyed along the wall's shadow, carrying scriptures that would change Chinese thought forever. In this era, the wall was not a prison of stone. It was a line that connected as much as it divided. The Tang emperors understood that true strength came not from isolation, but from balance. Open borders guarded by power, diplomacy supported by steel, to the western edge of the empire, where the Gobi Desert meets the mountains, stood the mighty Yumengwan, Jade Gate Pass, and Yangwan Pass, two gateways through which the Tang's lifeblood flowed. Here, the Great Wall merged with the Silk Road, the artery that carried silk, tea, ceramics, and culture from China to Central Asia and beyond. These outposts were more than military posts. They were melting pots of humanity. Persian traders, Saadian musicians, Arab scholars, and Chinese officials mingled in the bustling markets. The walls and watchtowers that had once echoed with war drums now heard the laughter of travelers and the clinking of goods being exchanged. To maintain order, the Tang government stationed professional troops, known as the Jadushi, regional commanders with both civil and military authority. They manned forts and controlled the flow of trade, ensuring safety for caravans and collecting taxes for the imperial treasury. The wall thus became a lifeline of economic control. Every gate was a checkpoint, every watchtower a message relay, every fortress a miniature kingdom watching the frontier. The Tang also expanded China's influence far beyond the wall. Through diplomacy and conquest, they established protectorates deep into Central Asia, reaching as far as modern-day Kazakhstan and Afghanistan. In these regions, the wall's strategic presence was echoed by smaller fortifications and beacon lines, stretching the empire's reach like veins across the desert. However, maintaining such vast frontiers came at a cost. The Tang military had to divide its forces across distant borders, stretching its resources thin. Rebellions in remote provinces, attacks from Western Turks, and internal corruption began to slowly erode the foundation of the empire's power. Still, during its height, the Great Wall stood proud, less a fortress of fear and more a monument of prestige. Travelers wrote of its beauty at sunrise, when the towers cast long shadows across the sand like the ribs of a sleeping dragon. For centuries, it had been a scar across the earth. Under the Tang, it became a vein of life. As centuries passed, the Tang dynasty's brilliance began to fade. What began as an age of harmony and abundance gradually descended into turmoil. The Lushan Rebellion, 755 to 763 CE, shattered the empire's illusion of stability. Once loyal generals rose in defiance, cities burned, and millions perished. In the aftermath, the Tang court struggled to rebuild what had been lost. The Great Wall, too, suffered. Outposts were abandoned, garrisons fled, and many frontier regions fell into the hands of new tribal powers. The Turks, Tibetans, and later the Khitan began to dominate the northern and western steppes once more. The wall's beacon towers went dark, and silence replaced the signal fires that had once connected the empire's heartbeat. Yet, even in decline, the wall remained a witness to endurance. Pilgrims like the Buddhist monk Xuanzang, who had earlier traveled through the wall's western gates, left behind vivid accounts of its majesty and mystery. Foreign envoys still marveled at its scale, though many sections lay buried under drifting sand. By the late 9th century, the Tang court's authority had shrunk. The empire that once reached the edges of Central Asia now struggled to control its own provinces. In 907 CE, the Tang dynasty fell, giving way to the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. Another cycle of fragmentation and chaos. The wall, like China itself, entered another era of uncertainty. It would be rebuilt and forgotten, guarded and abandoned, depending on who ruled the land. But through it all, it stood as a silent historian, older than kings, stronger than time. The Tang era had shown the wall's other side, not as a cold barrier, but as a living bridge between worlds. And even though the empire crumbled, the wall remained, waiting for the next dynasty to awaken its stones once again. When the glorious Tang dynasty fell in 907 CE, China once again splintered into chaos. Regional warlords seized power, carving the empire into smaller kingdoms. It wasn't until 960 CE that Emperor Taizu established the Song dynasty, bringing peace and unity back to the land, but not to its frontiers. Beyond the northern horizon, new powers had emerged. The Khitan Liao dynasty in the northeast, and later, the Tangut Western Xia in the northwest. Both would test the strength of the new Song rulers. Unlike the Tang, the Song emperors were scholars, not warriors. They valued art, literature, and bureaucracy more than conquest. The Song capital, Kaifeng, became a jewel of learning and trade, yet it stood vulnerable to attack from the north. The Great Wall, now ancient and fractured, could no longer serve as an effective shield. Much of it had decayed into dust, and new political realities made its reconstruction difficult. Instead of rebuilding massive stretches of the wall, the Song emperors focused on fortified cities and river defenses. Still, they maintained critical wall sections in frontier regions, such as Shaanxi and Hebei, areas that bordered the powerful Khitan and later the Jurchen Jin dynasty. These sections weren't just barriers. They were symbols of resilience in a time when China's borders had shrunk. Trade and diplomacy often replaced warfare. The Song paid tributes to the Khitan and Jurchen, hoping to maintain peace. Envoys crossed the remnants of the wall, carrying silks, silver, and official letters. What had once been a boundary of blood now became a bridge of uneasy coexistence. But peace bought with gold is fragile. The wall's silence was deceptive. Beneath it, tensions brewed. The Song emperors knew that while the wall could not stop northern horsemen, its ruins still marked the edge of a civilization struggling to preserve its soul. The empire of scholars stood behind stones built by warriors, hoping that knowledge would do what weapons could not. To the north, the Khitan people established the Liao dynasty, 907 to 1125 CE, ruling over vast territories of Manchuria and northern China. The Khitan were semi-nomadic, skilled horsemen and shrewd politicians who adopted Chinese systems of governance while keeping their tribal roots. Understanding the strategic importance of fortifications, the Liao rulers constructed their own version of the Great Wall, known as the Liao Wall. This wall stretched across the present-day Inner Mongolia and Hebei regions. It wasn't a single massive structure, but a chain of earthen ramparts, trenches, and watchtowers built to guard against rival tribes such as the Jurchens and the Western Xia. The Liao Wall was a product of its time, less a monument of empire, more a practical line of defense for a nomadic agrarian kingdom. When the Jurchens overthrew the Liao and founded the Jin dynasty, 1115 to 1234 CE, they too recognized the wall's importance. The Jin rulers extended and strengthened the fortifications in northern China, using bricks and stone in some areas, particularly around Beijing, then known as Zhongdu. For the first time in centuries, large-scale wall building returned to China, not under Chinese rule, but under foreign dynasties who had learned from Chinese civilization itself. Ironically, while the Song dynasty to the south admired culture and refinement, it was the northern conquerors, the Liao and Jin, who revived the tradition of wall building and frontier defense. Their walls marked not only their borders, but their ambition to rule China permanently. For the Chinese people living under these northern empires, the wall no longer separated us from them. Instead, it had become a symbol of overlapping identities. Chinese artisans building for non-Chinese rulers, nomads defending Chinese land, and empires learning from the civilizations they conquered. The wall had once divided worlds. Now, it bound them together in a complicated web of power, survival, and adaptation. That'd be why the 12th century, the Great Wall and its successors had seen centuries of glory and decay, peace and war. But a new storm was rising from the distant steppes, one that would dwarf every invasion before it. Far to the north, under the endless sky of Mongolia, a young warrior named Temujin was uniting the tribes under his banner. The world would soon know him as Genghis Khan. Before his rise, the Jin dynasty controlled much of northern China and believed its walls were unbreachable. The Jin fortifications, strong, high, and guarded, had protected them for decades. But they had forgotten a lesson written in blood throughout history. No wall is invincible if the people behind it grow complacent. In 1211 CE, the Mongol armies swept south. They crossed deserts, rivers, and mountains with speed the world had never seen. The Jin's walls slowed them, but only for a moment. Using superior tactics, siege weapons, and raw determination, the Mongols broke through. The once mighty frontier crumbled. Cities that had stood for generations fell one after another. When the dust settled, the Jin dynasty was shattered, and northern China lay in Mongol hands. The wall, whether built by the Qin, Han, Liao, or Jin, had failed to hold back the storm of the steppe. But its destruction marked the beginning of a new chapter. For the first time, all of China, from the deserts of the west to the seas of the east, would fall under the rule of a foreign power. That power was the Mongol Empire, the largest land empire the world has ever seen. Under Genghis Khan and his descendants, the Great Wall's role would transform once again, from barrier to border, from defense to symbol. As the wall's stones lay cracked and buried, a new empire rose that no wall could contain. The Dragon of China had fallen into the hands of the Riders of the Wind. The wall had once divided worlds. Now, it bound them together in a complicated web of power, survival, and adaptation. That'd be why the 12th century, the Great Wall and its successors had seen centuries of glory and decay, peace and war. But a new storm was rising from the distant steppes, one that would dwarf every invasion before it. Far to the north, under the endless sky of Mongolia, a young warrior named Temujin was uniting the tribes under his banner. The world would soon know him as Genghis Khan. Before his rise, the Jin dynasty controlled much of northern China and believed its walls were unbreachable. The Jin fortifications, strong, high, and guarded, had protected them for decades. But they had forgotten a lesson written in blood throughout history. No wall is invincible if the people behind it grow complacent. In 1211 CE, the Mongol armies swept south. They crossed deserts, rivers, and mountains with speed the world had never seen. The Jin's walls slowed them, but only for a moment. Using superior tactics, siege weapons, and raw determination, the Mongols broke through. The once mighty frontier crumbled. Cities that had stood for generations fell one after another. When the dust settled, the Jin dynasty was shattered, and northern China lay in Mongol hands. The wall, whether built by the Qin, Han, Liao, or Jin, had failed to hold back the storm of the steppe. But its destruction marked the beginning of a new chapter. For the first time, all of China, from the deserts of the west to the seas of the east, would fall under the rule of a foreign power. That power was the Mongol Empire, the largest land empire the world has ever seen. Under Genghis Khan and his descendants, the Great Wall's role would transform once again, from barrier to border, from defense to symbol. As the wall's stones lay cracked and buried, a new empire rose that no wall could contain. The Dragon of China had fallen into the hands of the Riders of the Wind. The year was 1206 CE, and the world trembled under a new name, Genghis Khan, the unifier of all Mongols. His armies were not vast in number, but unmatched in speed, strategy, and discipline. The steppe had forged them into lightning, swift, silent, and unstoppable. For centuries, the Great Wall had stood as China's northern sentinel. But against this storm of horsemen, it was little more than an old scar on the land. The Jin dynasty, rulers of northern China, had long relied on their fortified lines and grand citadels. Their walls stretched across mountains and rivers, rebuilt with brick and earth, guarded by thousands of soldiers. Yet, Genghis Khan understood that walls were built by men, and men could be broken. His armies bypassed strongholds, cutting off supply lines, striking deep where defenses were weakest. In 1211 CE, the Mongols crossed the Gobi Desert and swept through the Jin frontier. Siege engines roared. Flaming arrows rained on city gates. The walls that had stood for centuries cracked under the relentless assault. One by one, cities like Datong and Zhongdu fell. No empire had ever moved with such ruthless efficiency. The Mongols didn't seek to merely conquer. They sought to dominate. Their campaign was not chaos, but cold precision. They spared artisans, engineers, and scholars, forcing them to serve the Mongol war machine. Chinese siege engineers helped the Mongols destroy the very walls their ancestors had once built to keep invaders out. By 1234 CE, the Jin dynasty was obliterated. The Mongols turned their gaze southward to the Song dynasty, the last bastion of Chinese sovereignty. The Great Wall, once the heartbeat of defense, now lay in ruins, scattered like bones across the northern plains. It no longer marked a border, it marked a memory. The world had changed. The wall that once divided civilizations had been rendered meaningless by an empire that recognized no boundaries. For Genghis Khan's successors, China was no longer a foreign land to invade. It was a jewel to rule. After decades of relentless conquest, Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, emerged as the master of China. In 1271 CE, he declared the founding of a Yuan dynasty, with himself as emperor. For the first time in history, all of China, north and south, was under foreign rule. The Great Wall, which had once defined China's limits, now stood deep inside the empire's heart. Under the Yuan, the wall's purpose dissolved. The Mongols, whose power came from mobility and open plains, saw no need for barriers. The wall was not repaired, not guarded, and often ignored. Entire stretches of it crumbled into dust as the empire focused on internal trade, governance, and expansion. Kublai Khan moved his capital to Didu, modern-day Beijing, near the old wall, not to defend it, but to control the routes of the Silk Road and the agricultural wealth of the North China Plain. His rule brought order and prosperity, but also deepened the cultural divide between the Mongol elite and the Han Chinese majority. The Mongols maintained their nomadic lifestyle, refusing to fully adopt Chinese traditions. The empire's administration was tiered: Mongols at the top, Central Asians in the middle, and Han Chinese at the bottom. The Great Wall, once a barrier of geography, now symbolized an invisible wall of class and race. Still, the Yuan dynasty connected the east and west like never before. Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler, crossed these lands and described the wall as a relic of ancient times, a ruin that once guarded kingdoms long forgotten. To him, and to the world beyond China, the wall was a wonder, a myth, and a monument to human ambition. But even as the Mongol Empire stretched across Asia, cracks began to appear. Corruption spread, rebellions simmered, and the once mighty riders of the steppe became entangled in the politics of empire. The Great Wall may have fallen silent, but history was preparing its echo. A new China was rising from within, one that would reclaim not just its land, but its identity. That be why the early 14th century, the Mongol rulers of the Yuan dynasty had grown distant from the very people they governed. The empire's wealth flowed through trade and taxation, but its heart had grown hollow. Famine struck the countryside, floods ravaged the Yellow River basin, and plague whispered death through the cities. The Mongols had conquered China, but they had never truly understood it. The Han Chinese population, long oppressed and heavily taxed, began to stir with rebellion. Secret societies like the Red Turbans rose in defiance, inspired by ancient prophecies that foretold the fall of the Mongols and the rebirth of a native dynasty. Villages armed themselves. Banners of revolt fluttered across the plains once guarded by the Great Wall. In 1368 CE, a peasant monk-turned-general named Zhu Yuanzhang led a massive uprising. His forces stormed the Mongol capital of Dadu, forcing the Yuan rulers to flee north into the steppe. China was reborn under a new dynasty, the Ming. For the first time in centuries, Chinese hands once again held the reins of empire. The Mongol dream had burned bright but brief. Their empire, once stretching from Europe to the Pacific, fragmented into dust. And so the Great Wall, that ancient dragon of stone, stirred once more. The Ming emperors understood the lesson written by centuries of conquest, that peace must be defended. They would not let the mistakes of the past be repeated. The wall, neglected and forgotten during the Yuan's reign, would soon rise again, taller, stronger, and more magnificent than ever before. Brick by brick, tower by tower, it would be reborn not as a ruin, but as a symbol of China's eternal spirit. The Mongols had erased the wall's meaning, but in doing so, they had ensured its rebirth. From the ashes of foreign rule, a new China rose, proud, defiant, and ready to build the greatest wall the world had ever seen. The year was 1368 CE, and the drums of rebellion had finally silenced the thunder of Mongol hoofs. Zhu Yuanzhang, once a destitute monk, stood atop the walls of Nanjing as the first emperor of the Ming dynasty, taking the reign title Hongwu, meaning vast military might. His rise from poverty to power symbolized the rebirth of the Chinese spirit, resilient, patient, and unyielding. The Yuan dynasty had left behind chaos and fear, but the Ming sought restoration and order. The new rulers knew one truth written by centuries of blood, that peace without defense was an illusion. The Mongols might have fled north, but their threat lingered like a shadow across the horizon. The steppes, once the cradle of invasion, still stirred with nomadic tribes ready to test China's resolve. And so, the Ming leaders turned their gaze to the ancient symbol of endurance, the Great Wall. For generations, the wall had slept in silence. Its bricks crumbled, its towers decayed, and its purpose had faded with the winds of time. But Emperor Hongwu and his successors saw in it a promise, the promise of security, sovereignty, and pride. They envisioned not a line of defense made of earth and wood, but a fortress of stone and fire that would stretch farther and stronger than ever before. Under the Ming, the Great Wall would rise anew, no longer a single wall, but a network of fortifications, watchtowers, beacon towers, garrisons, and military roads. It was not just a wall to keep invaders out. It was a system to keep China united within. Each brick laid by the Ming was a message to the world. China had returned, and it would never bow again. The Great Wall became more than protection. It became a statement, an architectural declaration of empire, a visible boundary of civilization itself. The Ming would soon transform it into one of the most enduring monuments humanity has ever created. By the late 15th century, the Ming dynasty entered its golden age of construction. The emperors Yongle, Hongzhi, and Jiajing turned the rebuilding of the Great Wall into a generational mission. What began as scattered defenses under early Ming rulers evolved into a colossal engineering campaign stretching across deserts, mountains, and rivers. Tens of thousands of workers, soldiers, peasants, prisoners, and artisans were conscripted to build what would become the largest human-made structure in history. They mixed lime with sticky rice and stone to create mortar so strong that even centuries later, the walls would resist erosion. The Ming engineers innovated with fired bricks and stone slabs, replacing the fragile rammed earth of the ancient walls. Beacon towers were built at regular intervals, each capable of sending smoke signals by day and fire by night. A message could travel hundreds of kilometers in mere hours, warning garrisons of approaching invaders. The Great Wall was no longer just a physical barrier. It had become a living network of communication and defense. The strategic passes, like Jiangwen, Shanhaiguan, and Jiaguan, were fortified with gates, moats, and watchtowers, transforming them into miniature fortresses. Each pass became both a military stronghold and a thriving hub of trade, as merchants carried silk, spices, and salt through the empire's veins. Yet, the glory of the wall came at a heavy price. Laborers died by the thousands, buried beneath the stones they carried. Their unmarked graves became part of the wall itself, silent witnesses to the cost of imperial ambition. To the Ming emperors, this sacrifice was necessary. They believed that the wall was not just protection for the present, but insurance for the future. A fortress so vast that even time itself would hesitate before tearing it down. As the wall rose higher, so did China's pride. It stood as the mightiest expression of Ming strength, a boundary between the civilized world and the chaos beyond the steppes. BY the 16th century, the Great Wall had reached its ultimate form, a dragon of stone and earth winding more than 21,000 kilometers across the land. From the sands of Gansu to the cliffs of Liaoning, it stretched like the spine of the nation, guarding villages, valleys, and imperial secrets. But the world beyond the wall was never silent. The Mongols, though weakened, continued to raid across the frontier. Under the leadership of Altan Khan, the tribes once again surged toward the border, testing the wall's might. In 1550, Mongol cavalry breached near Beijing, burning the suburbs before withdrawing. The shock sent waves through the imperial court. For all its strength, the wall was not invincible. Its power depended on those who guarded it. Ming generals began to reform the frontier armies, reinforcing garrisons and restoring sections weakened by neglect. The 9 border garrisons were established, vast military zones that stationed hundreds of thousands of soldiers along the wall. Each garrison operated like a small city, complete with markets, barracks, and farms, ensuring that the frontier could sustain itself during long defenses. Beyond military value, the wall became deeply symbolic in Ming culture. Artists painted it as a dragon that breathed fire against chaos. Poets called it the spine of heaven, and officials used its image to praise loyalty and endurance. For the Chinese people, it was both shield and soul, a reminder of unity in the face of endless threats. Yet beneath the pride, cracks began to show, not in stone, but in spirit. Corruption seeped through the bureaucracy, and the once disciplined armies grew complacent. The empire's strength was fading, even as its greatest monument stood tall against the sky. As storms gathered in the north once more, the wall that had defined an era was about to face its greatest test yet, the rise of a new power beyond its shadow. The Manchus, who would bring an end to the Ming and reshape China forever, that be why the dawn of the 17th century, the once mighty Ming dynasty stood exhausted. Centuries of wars, corruption, and natural disasters had drained its treasury and its will. The Great Wall still towered across mountains and deserts, its beacon towers rising like teeth from the earth. But inside the empire, the heart of the dragon was weakening. Peasant uprisings spread through the countryside. Floods of the Yellow River ruined crops, while famines drove villagers to desperation. Soldiers who once guarded the wall with honor now deserted for lack of pay. Garrison towns fell silent, their watchtowers unmanned, their fires unlit. The very empire that had built the wall to protect itself was now collapsing from within. In the north, beyond the wall, a new power was rising. The Manchus, a confederation of tribes from Manchuria under a leader named Nurhaci. Unlike the Mongols before them, the Manchus were patient and calculating. They admired Chinese administration and discipline, but sought to claim it for themselves. Nurhaci united his people and forged the Eight Banners, a powerful military system that blended nomadic mobility with organized command, a deadly combination. As Ming generals fought one another for survival, the Manchus advanced methodically. They built alliances, captured border forts, and seized key passes along the Great Wall. Step by step, the wall that once defined safety began to mark the empire's weakness. In 1626 CE, Nurhaci fell in battle, but his legacy lived through his son, Hong Taiji, who declared the founding of the Qing dynasty in 1636, long before he had conquered Beijing. The writing was on the wall, quite literally. The Great Wall, that grand symbol of protection, was no longer a shield. It had become a boundary between two worlds, one crumbling, one rising. The wind of destiny was changing direction, and soon, even the mightiest wall ever built could not stop it from sweeping across China. As the 1640s dawned, chaos reigned across the Ming Empire. Internal corruption and rebellion tore through its core. One of the largest uprisings was led by a former postal clerk turned warlord, Li Zicheng, the self-proclaimed dashing king. His rebel army, hungry and furious, swept through the provinces, burning cities and defeating imperial troops with shocking ease. In 1644 CE, Li's forces reached the gates of Beijing. The emperor, Chongzhen, desperate and betrayed by his own ministers, realized his dynasty was finished. On a moonless night, he climbed Coal Hill overlooking the Forbidden City and hanged himself from a tree, leaving behind a note of sorrow. "I am ashamed to face my ancestors." The Ming dynasty had fallen, not by invasion, but by its own decay. Yet the Great Wall still stood, and beyond it, the Manchus waited. The key lay at Shanhaiguan Pass, known as the first pass under heaven. There, the wall met the sea, an unbreakable gate between Manchuria and China proper. Guarding it was General Wu Sangui, one of the last loyal Ming commanders. As news of Beijing's fall reached him, Wu faced an impossible choice: surrender to the rebel Li Zicheng, who had taken the capital, or ally with the Manchus, whom he had long fought to keep out. In that moment of desperation, history twisted. Wu opened the gates of the Great Wall, not to defend China, but to invite the Manchus inside to destroy the rebels. The Manchu cavalry thundered through Shanhaiguan like a storm. They crushed Li Zicheng's forces and marched straight to Beijing. Within weeks, they had seized the city and proclaimed a new dynasty, the Qing. The wall had stood for centuries as the line that divided the Chinese from their conquerors. But now, it had become the bridge that let the conquerors in. For the first time, China's greatest defense became the path of its own conquest. When the Qing dynasty claimed Beijing, it did not destroy the Great Wall. It claimed it as its own. The Manchus understood the power of symbols. To rule China, they had to rule its history. The wall, once a sign of resistance against northern invaders, was now redefined as the empire's northern border, a line protecting a united realm under Qing rule. In the early Qing years, the wall returned to a quiet existence. Patrols still guarded the watchtowers, but the empire's power now flowed not from its stones, but from diplomacy, trade, and military reform. The Manchus adopted many Ming traditions, Confucian laws, Chinese language, and even the imperial rituals of the Forbidden City. To the world, It appeared as though China had simply changed rulers, not identity. But the irony of the wall remained. It had failed to defend the dynasty that built it, and yet it survived as the emblem of China itself. Foreign travelers, arriving through newly opened trade routes, marveled at its vastness. Jesuit missionaries like Matteo Ricci and explorers from the West described it as a wonder beyond imagination, solidifying its myth in global history. For the people living along its length, life continued much as before. Farmers cultivated the valleys beneath its shadow. Soldiers patrolled the old towers, now serving a new emperor. To them, the wall was neither triumph nor failure. It was simply life, a silent guardian that had watched empires rise and fall. By the 18th century, the Great Wall was no longer an active line of defense, but a monument to endurance. Its stones carried the memory of ambition, blood, and hope. It had witnessed unity and betrayal, strength and decay. It had seen dynasties burn and be reborn. The Manchu conquest had proven one eternal truth. No wall, no matter how mighty, can stop the wind of change. The wall remained, but the world around it was shifting toward modernity, toward contact with the outside world, and toward a new age that would test China in ways no invader ever could. When the Qing dynasty settled upon the throne of China in 1644 CE, the Great Wall, once the beating heart of the empire's defense, entered a long and quiet sleep. The Manchus had conquered the Middle Kingdom not through brute force against the wall, but by passing through it. And now, as masters of the realm, they saw little reason to fear the lands beyond. The wall's purpose had faded, but its presence remained, like an old soldier resting after centuries of battle. For nearly 200 years, China under the Qing enjoyed a fragile peace. Emperors like Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong presided over one of the most prosperous and cultured periods in Chinese history. The empire stretched farther than it ever had before, deep into Tibet, Mongolia, and Xinjiang. The Great Wall, once the line dividing civilization from barbarism, now lay far inside China's borders. The frontiers of the empire had moved far beyond it. The Qing rulers were not ignorant of the wall's symbolic power. They restored a few sections near important passes, not for defense, but to remind their subjects and foreign envoys of the empire's enduring might. Shanhaiguan Pass, the first gate under heaven, was repaired and decorated with imperial inscriptions. It became a site of ceremony rather than war. But most of the wall was left to the mercy of time. Watchtowers turned to ruins, gates buried in drifting sand, and bricks stolen by villagers to build homes and roads. Yet even in decay, it remained majestic. Travelers from Europe and the Middle East, allowed into China through new trade routes, marveled at its vastness. To them, the wall was a relic of a mysterious and ancient civilization, a symbol of both China's greatness and its isolation. The wall had done its duty. Now it stood as the silent witness to a dynasty that sought harmony instead of conquest, stability instead of expansion. But the world outside was changing, and soon the sleeping dragon would be forced to awaken. By the 18th century, while the Qing Empire thrived in internal peace, the outside world surged forward into an age of exploration, science, and imperial ambition. European powers, Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal, sailed across oceans in search of trade, resources, and influence. For them, China was the ultimate prize, a land of silk, porcelain, tea, and unimaginable wealth. The Qing, proud and self-sufficient, saw no need for the West. The Emperor Qianlong, in his famous letter to Britain's King George III in 1793, declared, we possess all things. I set no value on objects strange or ingenious, and have no use for your country's manufactures. It was a statement of confidence, and the first whisper of future tragedy. The Great Wall, by then, had become a metaphor. It no longer guarded against nomadic horsemen. It symbolized the empire's mental barrier against change. While the West industrialized, invented steam power, and developed global empires, China clung to its traditional systems, convinced of its superiority. As the 19th century dawned, this belief shattered. British gunboats arrived at China's coast, demanding trade and submission. The Opium Wars, 1839 to 1842, 1856 to 1860, broke the illusion of invulnerability. The Qing armies, armed with outdated weapons and ancient strategies, were crushed by modern artillery. The Treaty of Nanking forced China to open ports and cede territory, including Hong Kong. The Great Wall, far from these coastal battles, watched silently from the northern hills as a new kind of invasion unfolded, not of soldiers, but of ideology and commerce. The foreigners had found a way past China's greatest barrier without even touching its stones. The empire that had once built walls to keep the world out was now being forced open. For the first time in history, China was not only defending its land, but its very identity. The dragon behind the wall had awoken, but the world outside was already beyond its reach. As the 19th century deepened, the Qing dynasty found itself besieged on every front. Internal rebellions like the Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, tore the heart of China apart. Led by a man who claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ, the Taiping forces created a rival kingdom that lasted more than a decade and cost over 20 million lives. At the same time, the Nian, Dungan, and Boxer uprisings erupted across the empire, each one fueled by anger, hunger, and disillusionment. The wall, once a symbol of strength, now mirrored the state of the empire, crumbling, neglected, and full of cracks. The great passes that once guarded the northern borders now stood empty or served as ruins for local markets. The imperial court, locked in ritual and conservatism, failed to see that their greatest threat was no longer from the north, but from within. Western powers carved their influence across China like knives on a map. Spheres of control in Shanghai, Canton, and Tianjin. The Qing government, desperate to maintain dignity, tried to modernize too late. The self-strengthening movement attempted to blend Chinese tradition with Western technology, but corruption and fear strangled progress. Meanwhile, the wall remained. Travelers, explorers, and soldiers from Europe and America visited it and wrote of its faded glory. To them, it was both awe-inspiring and tragic, a monument to a civilization that had built greatness but could not protect it from time. By 1900 CE, as the Boxer Rebellion failed and foreign troops marched into Beijing, the Qing dynasty's end was sealed. The dragon had grown too weary to rise again. The Great Wall, standing silent in the distance, seemed to mourn, not just for a fallen dynasty, but for an age that had finally passed. China was entering a new era, one of revolution, reform, and rebirth. The ancient wall that had once separated China from the world would soon stand as a bridge between the past and the modern age. By the early 20th century, the Qing dynasty was a shadow of its former self. Centuries of isolation, corruption, and failed reforms had left the empire vulnerable, both internally and externally. The once mighty dragon had grown weak. Its breath could no longer fend off the storms sweeping across the land. The Great Wall, which had once been the defining symbol of Chinese defense, had been relegated to a relic of memory and pride. Many sections were in ruin. Stones had been removed by locals for houses, roads, and temples. Yet, even in decay, the wall stood as a reminder of centuries of ambition, labor, and resilience. To some, it symbolized national identity. To others, it was a haunting reminder of the empire's inability to defend itself against modern challenges. Foreign powers increasingly encroached upon China. The Sino-Japanese War, 1894 to 1895, exposed the empire's military weakness, leading to the loss of Taiwan and humiliating treaties that stripped sovereignty from China. Western influence expanded rapidly through spheres of control and unfair agreements, threatening not just territorial integrity, but the cultural and political soul of the nation. The Qing court seemed powerless to respond effectively. Internal unrest compounded external threats. The Boxer Rebellion, 1899 to 1901, was both a violent backlash against foreign influence and a desperate cry of a people frustrated with their government. The Great Wall, silent in the distance, bore witness to these convulsions. A stone dragon that could no longer roar, but still symbolized the endurance of the Chinese spirit. By the 1910s, reformers and revolutionaries recognized that survival required radical change. They argued that the wall, impressive as it was, could not save a nation from collapse. China needed modern institutions, education, and military reform, a transition from static defense to dynamic governance. In the shadows of the wall, the whispers of revolution grew louder, foreshadowing the empire's final days. The Xinhai Revolution of 1911 marked the decisive end of imperial rule in China. Discontent had been simmering for decades, fueled by social inequality, corruption, famine, and the failure of the Qing government to modernize. Revolutionary leaders, including Sun Yat-sen, had been organizing clandestine movements for years, spreading ideas of nationalism, democracy, and modernization. The revolution swept through provinces, toppling Qing officials and seizing cities with unprecedented speed. Beijing, the imperial capital, became a center of political chaos. The emperor, Huai, was forced to abdicate, ending over 2,000 years of dynastic rule. The Great Wall, once a symbol of imperial power, now stood as a silent witness to the fall of the dynasty that had shaped and rebuilt it over centuries. The wall's northern passes, which had seen Mongols, Manchus, and armies of the Ming, now observe the end of an era not through invasion, but through internal transformation. It had outlasted dynasties, rebellions, and foreign threats, yet it could not prevent a nation from evolving. The Xinhai Revolution illustrated that China's survival would no longer depend solely on stone and mortar, but on the will and organization of its people. As revolutionaries set up the Republic of China, debates raged over modernization, governance, and identity. Some viewed the wall as a relic of outdated defense strategies, while others saw it as a symbol of resilience and continuity. In the northern mountains and deserts, its crumbling watchtowers bore silent testimony to the lessons of history, that strength must be dynamic, adaptable, and rooted in the people, not just in walls. The fall of the Qing dynasty was both an ending and a beginning. For the first time in centuries, China faced the challenge of defining itself in the modern world without an emperor, yet the Great Wall remained, stretching across the land like an ancient spine. It no longer defended borders, but served as a reminder of what had been fought for and what could still endure. Scholars and historians of the early 20th century began to study the wall not as a military tool, but as a cultural artifact. Its towers, passes, and beacon systems revealed sophisticated planning, understanding of geography, and the capacity to mobilize vast populations. The labor of millions of workers, the sacrifices of countless lives, and the architectural ingenuity behind each brick became a lens through which to view China's historical identity. Politically, China struggled to find stability. Warlords ruled large territories, foreign powers occupied strategic ports, and the struggle between tradition and modernization continued. Yet amidst this turmoil, the wall symbolized resilience. It reminded the people that despite centuries of invasion, rebellion, and dynastic collapse, the land and its culture endured. Tourists, diplomats, and scholars began to visit the wall in the early decades of the Republic. Photographs, sketches, and writings spread awareness globally, transforming the wall into an international symbol of Chinese history and identity. It was no longer just a barrier of defense, but a bridge connecting the lessons of the past with the aspirations of a nation striving toward a new era. By the mid-20th century, the Great Wall would inspire a renewed sense of pride as China moved toward unity and modernization. The stones that had once resisted invaders, endured labor, and symbolized dynastic might now represented the resilience of an entire people, a silent observer of China's transformation from empire to republic. The fall of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of the Republic of China in 1912 marked the beginning of a turbulent new era. The ancient imperial system was gone, but the legacy of centuries, including the Great Wall, persisted as both a physical and symbolic presence. While the wall no longer served as an active military defense, it remained a defining landmark in northern China, looming over mountains, deserts, and valleys like a silent guardian of a fractured nation. Republican China, however, was anything but unified. Warlord factions controlled large regions, often fighting each other rather than defending the nation as a whole. In the north, regions near the wall were governed by local militarists who occasionally used its passes for strategic advantage, but many sections were abandoned or left to decay. In some areas, bricks were stripped to build roads, homes, and small fortifications, a testament to practicality over historical reverence. Amid this chaos, foreign powers began to encroach further. Russia and Japan extended influence over northern territories, exploiting weak central authority. The wall, which had once repelled Mongols, Manchus, and even steppe invaders, could not stop diplomats, traders, and armies who operated with modern technology and industrial firepower. Its watchtowers, once vibrant with signal fires, now stood empty, their mortar cracking under the relentless sun and wind. The symbolism of the wall evolved. For some, it represented the endurance of the Chinese nation despite centuries of dynastic collapse. For others, it symbolized the limitations of traditional defense in an age of modern warfare. Republican China faced a paradox. The wall was both a source of national pride and a reminder of vulnerability, standing as a silent observer as the country teetered on the edge of foreign domination. By the 1930s, the specter of foreign invasion had returned, this time from Japan. The Japanese Empire, pursuing expansionist ambitions, eyed China's vast northern territories with a militaristic determination that would soon plunge the nation into total war. The Great Wall, especially key passes like Shanhaiguan, Jiangwan, and Gabiku, once the backbone of northern defense, became strategic focal points. Yet their ancient stones were no match for modern artillery, tanks, and aircraft. In 1933, Japanese forces launched a major assault on the wall during the defense of the Great Wall campaign, marking one of the first modern battles fought directly along its historic route. Chinese troops, often poorly equipped and undertrained, relied on the natural terrain and the remnants of ancient fortifications. Soldiers dug trenches behind crumbling ramparts, used watchtowers as improvised command posts, and fired rifles across the historic passes. Yet despite bravery and sacrifice, The wall could only slow the invaders. It could not stop them. The wall's defenses, centuries old, now served as a theater of modern warfare. Airplanes strafed mountain passes, artillery pounded old ramparts, and machine guns tore through garrisons. Japanese commanders recognized that the wall's value was less about stopping armies and more about controlling terrain. Battles along its length were brutal and chaotic, involving tens of thousands of soldiers. Villages beneath the wall were devastated, civilians displaced, and historic structures damaged beyond repair. For Chinese citizens and soldiers alike, the wall became both a line of honor and a painful reminder of vulnerability. Its ancient stones, once thought indomitable, were now witnesses to a conflict that no dynasty could have foreseen. A struggle not just for territory, but for survival, identity, and national sovereignty in a modern age. Throughout the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 1945, the Great Wall remained a powerful symbol, even as its physical presence became increasingly irrelevant in modern combat. Japanese forces bypassed or destroyed segments with ease, relying on mechanized divisions, air superiority, and superior coordination. Yet for the Chinese people, both soldiers and civilians, the wall was a reminder of resilience. Its shadowed passes inspired defensive campaigns, guerrilla actions, and local resistance movements. Artists, writers, and journalists during this era began to document the wall not merely as a military structure, but as a living witness to China's suffering and heroism. Photographs captured soldiers crouching behind crumbling watchtowers, refugees fleeing under its shadow, and mountaintop views of sweeping stone ramparts now scarred by modern warfare. The wall became a cultural artifact as much as a battlefield, a monument that connected contemporary struggles to centuries of history. After Japan's defeat in 1945, China faced another battle, rebuilding a nation exhausted by foreign invasion and civil war. The wall, partially damaged by decades of neglect and recent combat, remained largely intact, though many sections required urgent repair. It stood as a historical witness to China's journey, from dynastic empires, foreign invasions, and revolutionary upheavals to modern warfare. By the end of World War II, the Great Wall had once again transitioned from a defensive line to a symbol, a silent observer of a nation's transformation. Its stones, scarred yet enduring, represented resilience, unity, and identity. The wall had survived centuries of human ambition, war, and neglect, standing as a bridge between China's ancient past and the uncertain modern future. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was founded, signaling a radical transformation in Chinese society, governance, and identity. The centuries-old struggle for unity, security, and sovereignty had finally culminated in a central authority capable of envisioning modernization. Amid this political revolution, the Great Wall emerged not as a line of defense, but as a bridge to national pride and cultural heritage. Decades of war, rebellion, and neglect had left vast sections of the wall in ruin. Northern landscapes bore its scars, crumbling watchtowers, eroded ramparts, and dislocated stones. Yet for the new leadership, the wall was more than historical debris. It was a living monument of China's resilience, ingenuity, and continuity. Scholars, architects, and historians advocated for its preservation, seeing it as a symbol of Chinese endurance in the face of centuries of adversity. In the 1950s and 1960s, government-led preservation initiatives began along heavily trafficked sections near Beijing, including Badaling, Jiangnu, and Jiangnu. Workers reinforced foundations, rebuilt crumbling bricks, and restored watchtowers. The focus was not to return the wall to its former military glory. That era was long over, but to protect it as an emblem of national identity. Schools used it to teach history. Artists depicted it in murals and paintings. Writers immortalized its presence in novels and poetry. The wall, silent for centuries in the northern mountains, now became a canvas of pride and symbolism. It stood as a testament to the vision of dynasties past, the sacrifices of millions of laborers, an enduring spirit of a civilization that had survived invaders, internal collapse, and the modern horrors of war. The transformation of the wall from military structure to national monument marked the first time its significance shifted entirely from defense to culture, identity, and tourism. By the 1980s, China had opened its doors to the world, ushering in an era of mass tourism and international curiosity. The Great Wall, long admired by travelers, explorers, and scholars, became the crown jewel of cultural tourism. Visitors from across the globe flocked to sections like Badaling, where carefully restored paths allowed travelers to walk along the ramparts once traversed by soldiers, messengers, and emperors. Tourism brought new challenges. The influx of visitors caused where on ancient bricks increased erosion and created logistical issues for preservation. The government responded with strict regulations, guided tours, and controlled access to sensitive sections. Archaeologists documented structural weaknesses, mapping vulnerabilities across thousands of kilometers of stone. These efforts are not just about aesthetics, but about safeguarding history itself. Globally, the Great Wall became synonymous with China. UNESCO recognized its significance in 1987, granting it World Heritage status. The wall's length, historical importance, and architectural ingenuity were celebrated as unmatched human achievements. Photographs, films, and documentaries broadcast its grandeur worldwide, cementing its position as both a historical and cultural icon. Through tourism, the wall bridged the gap between the past and present, connecting foreign visitors with millennia of Chinese history. It was no longer a barrier but a path, guiding millions to witness the endurance of civilization that had survived invasions, dynastic collapses, foreign occupations, and revolutions. Each stone, each watchtower, each winding rampart became a story, a lesson, and a bridge to understanding China's complex history. In the 21st century, the Great Wall continues to inspire, educate, and challenge perceptions. Preservation efforts have expanded beyond popular tourist sections to remote, lesser-known stretches in Gansu, Hebei, and Inner Mongolia. Researchers employ advanced technologies, including drones, 3D mapping, and satellite imaging, to monitor erosion and prevent damage. The wall is no longer only a static monument. It is an active subject of scientific study and historical interpretation. Cultural initiatives highlight the wall's significance beyond bricks and mortar. Schools organize educational tours. Local communities celebrate festivals in its shadow, and documentaries explore the lives of the countless laborers who built it across centuries. The wall embodies a narrative of human ambition, sacrifice, and endurance, a testament to the capacity of a civilization to build, destroy, and rebuild itself over millennia. Internationally, the wall has become a symbol of unity, resilience, and human ingenuity. It appears in films, literature, and art, often representing both the strength and vulnerability of empires. Its enduring presence inspires reflection on how societies defend themselves, adapt to change, and preserve their heritage. As China advances technologically and economically, the Great Wall remains a touchstone, a physical reminder of where the nation has been and the lessons of its long history. Though it no longer guards against armies, it guards stories, memory, and identity. From its origins under the Qing dynasty to modern preservation, the wall has transcended its role as a simple fortification to become the eternal spine of civilization, a monument to the passage of time, the labor of millions, and the unbreakable spirit of China. For centuries, the Great Wall has not only defined geography, but also shaped the Chinese imagination. From the earliest dynasties, scholars, poets, and philosophers viewed it as more than a fortification. It became a canvas upon which ideals of endurance, loyalty, and human effort were projected. The wall's silhouette against the mountains inspired metaphors of the human struggle against time, nature, and mortality. During the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, poets like Wang Jihuan and Cixin immortalized the wall in verse. Cixin, a soldier poet stationed at frontier posts, wrote of its endless watchtowers and desolate stretches, using them as a symbol of both physical and emotional isolation. His words captured the duality of the wall. It was a barrier against enemies, yet also a marker of human perseverance. The wall stood as a challenge to nature and history alike, forcing those who observed it to reflect on ambition, sacrifice, and the limits of human control. Confucian scholars interpreted the wall as a moral allegory. Its massive construction, spanning mountains, rivers, and deserts, represented the capacity of organized human effort. The thousands of laborers, many of whom died in the process, became emblematic of devotion and communal responsibility. The wall became a metaphor not only for defense, but for the moral fabric that binds a society. In this sense, it was more than stone. It was an enduring symbol of the Chinese people's collective strength, resilience, and ethical commitment. Even centuries later, the wall inspired reflections on life and impermanence. The Ming dynasty poets wrote about its immensity in the context of fleeting human ambition. The Qing scholars regarded it as a relic that contained the echoes of past empires, whispering lessons for rulers and citizens alike. Across dynasties, the wall existed simultaneously as history, art, and philosophy, anchoring human memory to the physical landscape in ways few other monuments could. Visual art, like poetry, immortalized the Great Wall. From early ink scrolls to modern paintings, it has been rendered as both landscape and metaphor. During the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, artists painted its meandering stretches across mountains, emphasizing harmony between human construction and natural terrain. Brush strokes captured the tension between the rigid lines of the wall and the curves of the mountains, suggesting that human ambition must coexist with the immensity of nature. Ming and Qing painters elevated the wall as a central motif in depictions of northern landscapes. Artists used it to symbolize strength, vigilance, and the delicate balance between civilization and the wilderness. The wall often appeared as a ribbon winding through clouds and mist, with soldiers, travelers, or distant pagodas providing scale. These artistic interpretations were not mere representation. They were meditations on human effort, impermanence, and the grand sweep of history. In modern times, photography, film, and digital media have transformed the wall into a global icon. Black and white images captured its weathered stones, crumbling towers, and shadowed valleys, highlighting both decay and resilience. Filmmakers used it as a dramatic backdrop for stories of courage, invasion, and endurance. Even contemporary artists, using abstract interpretations, convey the wall's symbolic resonance as a line separating past from present, civilization from wilderness, and mortality from eternity. Through these artistic expressions, the wall transcended its original purpose. While built as a military barrier, it became a canvas reflecting human emotion, ambition, fear, and hope. From classical ink paintings to modern cinematic epics, the wall has continued to inspire generations, bridging the tangible and intangible aspects of Chinese cultural memory. In the modern era, the Great Wall has evolved into a symbol not just for China, but for the world. During the 20th and 21st centuries, as China faced internal upheavals, foreign invasions, and political transformation, the wall became a unifying emblem of national identity. It was featured in textbooks, postcards, and propaganda campaigns, reminding citizens that their nation's strength was built on centuries of collective effort and sacrifice. Internationally, the wall symbolizes endurance, human ambition, and the intersection of civilization with nature. It is one of the most recognized monuments on the planet, frequently appearing in documentaries, global media, and academic discourse. UNESCO's designation of the wall as a World Heritage Site in 1987 reinforced its global significance, highlighting not only its architectural brilliance, but also its role as a living chronicle of human history. The wall also functions as a metaphor for modern challenges. It represents the tension between preservation and development, the balance between honoring history and embracing progress. Tourists, scholars, and policymakers must navigate the duality of the wall, a relic of defense, a work of art, and a national symbol. Its physical presence reminds people of historical continuity, while its symbolic weight inspires reflection on collective identity, resilience, and human ingenuity. Ultimately, the Great Wall stands as a bridge between the past and the present. It reminds humanity that monuments are more than stone. They are repositories of memory, culture, and aspiration. From ancient poets and dynastic generals to modern citizens and global travelers, the wall has endured as a shared narrative, a testament to human perseverance, creativity, and the ceaseless desire to leave a mark upon the world. The construction of the Great Wall stands as one of the most ambitious engineering projects in human history. Its earliest origins trace back to the 7th century BCE, when independent states in northern China began erecting walls to defend against nomadic incursions. Yet it was under the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, that the wall became a unified system, spanning hundreds of miles and laying the foundation for what would later become the Great Wall as we recognize it today. Qin engineers faced extraordinary challenges. The northern terrain was a mix of deserts, mountains, rivers, and cliffs. Building across such varied geography required innovation, adaptability, and staggering human labor. In plains and lowlands, walls were often constructed with tamped earth. Layers of soil were compacted within wooden frames, creating dense structures capable of withstanding the elements and minor assaults. In mountainous regions, engineers relied on locally sourced stone, cutting blocks to fit the natural contours of ridges and valleys. Watchtowers, beacon towers, and signal stations were strategically placed along the wall to allow rapid communication across vast distances. Soldiers could use fire, smoke, flags, and mirrors to send warnings of approaching invaders, a system so effective that it allowed rapid mobilization despite limited technology. Bridges, ramps, and fortified gates were constructed to allow troop movement while maintaining defensive integrity. Every brick and stone was meticulously planned, illustrating an understanding of logistics and terrain that would rival many modern engineering feats. The labor force was colossal. Tens of thousands of peasants, convicts, and soldiers worked under harsh conditions. Many perished from exhaustion, disease, or accidents, and their sacrifice became etched into the very foundation of the wall. Each layer of tamped earth and every stone block represents not just construction, but the enduring human ambition to shape the landscape in the name of security, empire, and legacy. The wall achieved its most recognizable form during the Ming dynasty, 1368 to 1644 CE, when previous fortifications were extensively rebuilt, reinforced, and expanded. The Ming faced persistent threats from northern Mongol and Jurchen forces, prompting them to develop walls that were stronger, higher, and more strategically complex than ever before. Ming engineers replaced much of the tamped earth with fired bricks and quarried stones, particularly in areas near Beijing and critical mountain passes. Mortar made from lime and glutinous rice created a remarkably durable bonding material, allowing walls to withstand centuries of weathering and conflict. The wall's height increased, ranging from 20 to 26 feet in most accessible sections, with parapets that allowed archers to fire safely from behind cover. Ramparts, platforms, and crenellations were meticulously designed to provide defensive advantage while maintaining structural stability. Watchtowers were standardized in size and placement, creating a continuous system of surveillance that could communicate across vast distances. Beacon towers, equipped with fire and smoke signaling systems, enabled messages to traverse hundreds of miles in mere hours, an engineering marvel of communication long before telegraphs and radios. Gates and passes were reinforced with guard stations, inner courtyards, and fortified walls, turning the wall into a complex defensive network rather than a simple linear structure. Ming architects also adapted to terrain. In mountain passes, walls zigzagged to maximize defensive advantage. Steep ramps slowed enemy advances, while narrow passages allowed defenders to concentrate fire. On plains, double walls or earth and brick combinations created formidable barriers. The careful planning of materials, positioning, and labor exemplifies Ming ingenuity, combining aesthetic coherence with military practicality. Every curve, tower, and gate reflected centuries of accumulated knowledge, transforming the wall into both a military bulwark and a testament to human ingenuity. The engineering achievements of the Great Wall extend beyond its historical purpose. It exemplifies advanced understanding of logistics, material science, and large-scale project management. The coordination of labor, transportation of materials, and adaptation to challenging terrains required skills and foresight that remain remarkable even by modern standards. Today, modern engineers and archaeologists study the wall not only as a cultural relic, but as an unparalleled example of pre-industrial engineering. Sections like Beiteling, Simitai, and Jinko offer insights into construction techniques, including bricklaying patterns, foundation reinforcement, and erosion management. Drones, satellite mapping, and 3D modeling are now used to monitor structural integrity, revealing how ancient builders mitigated risks posed by landslides, floods, and seismic activity. The wall's construction techniques also inform modern conservation practices. Engineers face the delicate task of preserving original materials while reinforcing stability, balancing historical authenticity with durability. Preservation efforts highlight an enduring respect for ingenuity and labor of past generations. Beyond its practical and historical significance, the wall remains a symbol of human creativity and ambition. Each stone, tower, and mile represents not only defensive necessity, but also innovation, organization, and vision. As the wall stretches across deserts and mountains, it stands as a testament to what humans can achieve when purpose, labor, and ingenuity converge. From ancient empires to modern preservationists, the Great Wall continues to inspire awe, bridging the gap between history and engineering mastery, and serving as a timeless monument to human endeavor. From its earliest conception, the Great Wall of China was a response to the persistent threat of northern nomadic tribes. Its construction during the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BCE, aimed to unify fragmented fortifications, creating a continuous defensive line capable of deterring invasions. Yet the wall was more than a passive barrier. It functioned as a dynamic battlefield in which strategy, terrain, and ingenuity played crucial roles. Nomadic horsemen, skilled in mobility and sudden attacks, challenged the wall's effectiveness. While the structure could block large armies, smaller raiding parties often found ways to bypass or breach sections. Chinese generals adapted by using garrisons stationed along the wall, combined with signal towers for rapid communication. The wall was thus not a single defensive line, but a networked system, integrating terrain, manpower, and intelligence. Historical record from the Han Dynasty describe massive clashes along frontier fortifications. Soldiers utilized the height of the wall to their advantage, raining arrows upon advancing enemies and dropping heavy projectiles from watchtowers. Cavalry units were often stationed in valleys, ready to respond to breaches or pursue raiders. Defensive architecture, including moats, ramparts, and strategically placed gates, allowed defenders to control choke points while limiting exposure to direct attack. Over centuries, the wall's role as a battlefield evolved. It shifted from defending against mobile nomads to countering organized armies, particularly during the Ming Dynasty, when northern invasions became more structured. By integrating lessons from centuries of warfare, the wall exemplified the combination of natural geography and human engineering, a testament to strategic foresight in military planning. During the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644 CE, the wall reached its peak as a military fortification. The northern threat from Mongol and Jurchen forces required sophisticated strategies that leveraged the wall's architecture. The Ming did not rely solely on static defense. Instead, they developed an integrated system of communication, rapid deployment, and layered fortifications. Beacon towers formed an early warning network capable of transmitting messages over hundreds of miles. Smoke by day, fire by night, and flag signals relayed troop movements and enemy positions instantly, allowing commanders to respond quickly. Garrison stations, strategically placed at critical passes, ensured that forces could defend choke points and reinforce weak sections. Soldiers trained in archery, cavalry tactics, and siege defense were stationed in rotation, maintaining vigilance even during extended periods of peace. The Ming also employed psychological tactics. The imposing height, massive length, and sheer scale of the wall acted as a deterrent, projecting power and stability to potential invaders. In addition, fortifications were designed to slow enemy movement, funneling attackers into kill zones where archers and artillery could inflict maximum casualties. Earth and brick construction provided both durability and flexibility, allowing soldiers to repair breaches quickly during skirmishes. Historical battles demonstrate the effectiveness of these strategies. While the wall did not prevent all invasions, it allowed the Ming to control the pace of warfare, inflict strategic losses, and protect core regions of China. The interplay between human ingenuity, natural terrain, and architectural design created a military system unparalleled in scale and sophistication during the pre-modern era. By the late Qing dynasty and the Republican era, the wall's military function had largely diminished due to advancements in weaponry, including artillery, firearms, and mechanized vehicles. The Japanese invasions of the 20th century illustrated this reality, as modern forces could bypass or destroy wall fortifications with relative ease. Yet even in obsolescence, the wall remained a symbol of defensive strategy and ingenuity. Military historians study the wall not only for its physical structure, but for its demonstration of tactical adaptation over centuries. Its design reflects a nuanced understanding of geography, communication, and human psychology. Watchtowers, ramparts, gates, and beacon systems collectively formed a network capable of rapid response, demonstrating principles still relevant in modern military logistics and planning. Additionally, the wall has inspired cultural reflections on warfare. It represents both the limits and potential of human defense, a reminder that fortifications alone cannot secure a nation without adaptive strategies, leadership, and morale. During wars, the wall has served as a defensive advantage, a strategic anchor, and a psychological deterrent. Beyond its physical presence, it embodies the historical narrative of China's military evolution, from ancient dynasties to modern challenges, illustrating the perpetual interplay between human ambition, innovation, and the relentless march of history. In essence, the Great Wall was never merely stone. It was a living framework of strategy, endurance, and human ingenuity, an enduring monument to the art and science of warfare. Its presence on the battlefield, both ancient and modern, remains a testament to China's resilience and the timeless challenges of defense and survival. The Great Wall of China has long been more than a defensive structure. It is a vessel of myth, legend, and collective imagination. Across centuries, stories grew around its stones, transforming it into a symbol of endurance, human sacrifice, and even the supernatural. The wall became a stage upon which the drama of Chinese culture, morality, and history was played out in both oral and written traditions. One of the most famous legends is that of Meng Jiangnu, a woman whose story intertwines love, devotion, and the wall's formidable presence. According to the tale, her husband was conscripted to build the wall during the Qin dynasty, only to die from exhaustion and harsh conditions. Meng Jiangnu traveled hundreds of miles to find him and, overwhelmed by grief, wept so intensely that a section of the wall collapsed, revealing his remains. Her story became a poignant narrative about human suffering, loyalty, and the enormous cost of constructing the wall. Across generations, her tale inspired poetry, opera, and folk storytelling, cementing the wall not merely as a physical structure, but as a monument to human emotion. Other myths focus on supernatural protection. Some legends tell of spirits guarding the wall, warning travelers of impending danger or punishing those who attempt to defile it. In northern villages, elders passed down stories of invisible armies and mysterious sounds echoing along the wall at night, auditory remnants of centuries of labor, warfare, and sacrifice. These tales imbued the wall with layers of cultural meaning, turning it from stone and earth into a living symbol of history, spirituality, and human resilience. Throughout Chinese literary history, the Great Wall has inspired poets, historians, and novelists. Tang and Song dynasty writers often use the wall as a metaphor for human endurance and isolation. Its towering presence evoked both admiration and melancholy, symbolizing the impermanence of life and the burdens of imperial ambition. Later, Ming and Qing dynasty literature further developed these symbolic interpretations, reflecting on themes of sacrifice, loyalty, and the fragility of power. Modern Chinese literature, particularly after the 20th century, has continued this tradition. Writers use the wall as a backdrop for historical novels, war narratives, and reflective essays on national identity. It appears in stories of the Mongol invasions, the Republican era, and the Japanese occupation, linking the past with the human experiences of courage, suffering, and resilience. Through these narratives, the wall transcends its physical presence, becoming a literary character that interacts with humans across time and space. The wall has also inspired artists, filmmakers, and photographers. Cinematic depictions highlight its grandeur and drama, often juxtaposing the vastness of the landscape with the struggles of individual characters. From epic historical films to contemporary documentaries, the wall symbolizes endurance, national pride, and the enduring struggle between humanity and nature. Photographers capture its contours at sunrise and sunset, emphasizing its winding majesty across mountains and deserts. Each artistic representation reinforces the wall's dual nature, a physical fortification and a cultural icon, bridging the tangible and intangible elements of China's identity. In contemporary times, the Great Wall has become a global symbol, representing human achievement, perseverance, and cultural heritage. Its recognition by UNESCO in 1987 cemented its status as a monument of international significance, attracting millions of visitors each year. Beyond tourism, the wall inspires writers, filmmakers, and artists worldwide who draw upon its history, scale, and symbolism for creative expression. In popular culture, the wall frequently appears in literature, cinema, video games, and documentaries. International audiences associate it with China, resilience, and human ingenuity. Writers use it to explore themes of isolation, challenge, and perseverance, while filmmakers highlight its visual drama as a backdrop for stories of adventure, war, and historical reflection. It also serves as a metaphor in global discourse, representing barriers, ambition, and the human desire to leave a lasting mark on the world. Educational programs and cultural exchanges emphasize the wall's legacy, teaching students about the complexities of history, engineering, and human sacrifice. Modern China promotes the wall as a unifying symbol, reflecting continuity from ancient dynasties to contemporary society. Each brick, tower, and winding section tells a story of emperors, soldiers, peasants, poets, and artists, bridging millennia of human experience. Ultimately, the wall transcends its original purpose. From myths to literature, from art to global recognition, it embodies the intersection of history, culture, and human aspiration. It is not merely a barrier, it is a living monument, inspiring reflection, creativity, and admiration across generations and continents. The Great Wall of China, despite its incredible durability, faces relentless threats from the natural world. Spanning deserts, mountains, and valleys, it endures extreme temperature fluctuations, high winds, and heavy rainfall, each contributing to gradual decay. In the arid regions of Gansu and Inner Mongolia, sandstorms relentlessly erode sections built from tamped earth, gradually eating away at centuries of labor. In the mountainous northern regions, freeze-thaw cycles crack stone and mortar, destabilizing foundations and crumbling watchtowers. Rivers and streams, which once helped supply construction materials, now pose threats through seasonal flooding and soil erosion. Heavy rains wash away the foundation beneath certain wall sections, particularly in remote areas far from government oversight. Vegetation, while seemingly harmless, penetrates cracks in the walls and towers. Roots pry stones apart over time, accelerating degradation. Even the seemingly small growth of moss and lichen can, over decades, weaken the structure. Climate change exacerbates these natural threats. Rising temperatures and unpredictable rainfall patterns increase erosion rates, particularly in fragile desert sections. Snowmelt and heavier storms in mountainous regions accelerate the wear on older brick and stone walls. Preservationists face the dual challenge of maintaining historical authenticity while implementing modern techniques to protect against the relentless forces of nature. The Great Wall, once an immovable barrier, is now a monument vulnerable to environmental shifts, reminding the world that even the most monumental human achievements require vigilant care against the passage of time and natural elements. Human activity presents equally significant threats to the wall. Over centuries, local communities dismantled sections of the wall for building materials, roads, or agriculture. Modern urbanization and infrastructure projects continue this trend, often encroaching upon lesser-known stretches in remote areas. The expansion of towns, roads, and railways has inadvertently damaged sections of the wall, highlighting the delicate balance between development and preservation. Tourism, while vital for cultural awareness and the economy, imposes additional stress. Popular sections near Beijing, including Badaling, Jiangnu, and Simitai, endure millions of visitors each year. Foot traffic accelerates where on bricks and mortar, while littering and vandalism further degrade the structure. Even careful tourism requires constant monitoring to prevent irreversible damage. The challenge is to allow people to experience this historical wonder while ensuring that each step taken does not contribute to centuries of degradation. Moreover, illegal construction and mining threaten remote wall stretches. Sand and gravel excavation, necessary for modern industry, removes the very terrain that supports the wall, destabilizing its foundations. In some areas, theft of bricks for private use continues despite strict laws. Conservationists face an ongoing struggle against these pressures, balancing local development, cultural significance, and a need for strict enforcement. The wall, once a symbol of human ambition and endurance, is paradoxically endangered by the very hands that cherish it. Human activity presents equally significant threats to the wall. Over centuries, local communities dismantled sections of the wall for building materials, roads, or agriculture. Modern urbanization and infrastructure projects continue this trend, often encroaching upon lesser-known stretches in remote areas. The expansion of towns, roads, and railways has inadvertently damaged sections of the wall, highlighting the delicate balance between development and preservation. Tourism, while vital for cultural awareness and the economy, imposes additional stress. Popular sections near Beijing, including Badaling, Jiangnu, and Simitai, endure millions of visitors each year. Foot traffic accelerates where on bricks and mortar, while littering and vandalism further degrade the structure. Even careful tourism requires constant monitoring to prevent irreversible damage. The challenge is to allow people to experience this historical wonder while ensuring that each step taken does not contribute to centuries of degradation. Moreover, illegal construction and mining threaten remote wall stretches. Sand and gravel excavation, necessary for modern industry, removes the very terrain that supports the wall, destabilizing its foundations. In some areas, theft of bricks for private use continues despite strict laws. Conservationists face an ongoing struggle against these pressures, balancing local development, cultural significance, and a need for strict enforcement. The wall, once a symbol of human ambition and endurance, is paradoxically endangered by the very hands that cherish it. In response to these threats, China has developed extensive preservation initiatives, combining modern technology with traditional restoration methods. Government agencies, historians, and engineers collaborate to reinforce vulnerable sections while maintaining authenticity. Brick and stone reconstruction is often complemented by chemical stabilization, foundation reinforcement, and vegetation control. Remote areas are monitored using drones, satellite imaging, and 3D mapping, enabling rapid response to structural instability and environmental damage. Legal frameworks have strengthened preservation efforts. UNESCO World Heritage status has heightened global awareness, while domestic laws protect the wall from unauthorized construction and exploitation. Community-based programs educate locals about the historical importance of the wall, encouraging stewardship rather than destruction. Cultural tourism is now regulated, with guided pathways, controlled visitor numbers, and surveillance systems ensuring that tourism benefits preservation rather than undermining it. Modern restoration also emphasizes historical integrity. Preservationists carefully document and study original materials and construction techniques, ensuring that repairs align with the wall's architectural authenticity. In some cases, restoration includes reconstructing watchtowers and ramparts based on Ming dynasty designs, using traditional bricks, mortar, and methods. International collaboration further strengthens these efforts, with foreign experts contributing knowledge in materials science, structural engineering, and environmental protection. The Great Wall today stands not only as a historical monument, but as a symbol of human responsibility. Its preservation requires the collective effort of governments, scholars, communities, and visitors alike. While natural forces, human activity, and climate change continue to pose challenges, these modern initiatives demonstrate a commitment to safeguarding the wall, ensuring that future generations can witness, learn from, and be inspired by one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements. The Great Wall of China is perhaps the most universally recognized symbol of Chinese civilization. Beyond its physical grandeur and historical significance, it occupies a prominent place in global imagination, representing human ingenuity, perseverance, and the intersection of culture and history. Its iconic silhouette, stretching over mountains, deserts, and valleys, has made a compelling subject for storytellers, artists, and media producers worldwide. In literature and journalism, the wall often serves as a metaphor for both protection and division, endurance and isolation. Authors depict it as a boundary between civilizations, a tangible measure of human ambition, and a silent witness to history's triumphs and tragedies. Internationally, the wall's image frequently evokes awe, symbolizing the ability of human labor to impose order on nature. Its scale is both intimidating and inspiring, leading to comparisons with other global monuments while emphasizing the unique continuity of Chinese civilization. The wall's global recognition accelerated in the 20th century with travel writing and photography. Early Western explorers, diplomats, and scholars documented the wall, emphasizing its engineering brilliance and vast scope. Their accounts, accompanied by sketches and photographs, captivated audiences worldwide. These representations helped establish the wall as more than a regional or national symbol. It became a universal emblem of human history, achievement, and cultural identity. The Great Wall transcends borders, inviting viewers to consider not only China's past, but also the shared capacity of humanity to create enduring monuments that shape perception and imagination. The Great Wall's cinematic appeal is undeniable. From historical epics to contemporary adventure films, it has served as a dramatic backdrop for narratives spanning centuries of Chinese and global history. Filmmakers use its monumental scale to convey grandeur, isolation, and historical tension, often depicting climactic battles, military strategy, or personal journeys of perseverance. In Chinese cinema, the wall frequently anchors stories of dynastic struggle, border defense, and the human cost of empire. Epic battle sequences showcase soldiers traversing ramparts and watchtowers, highlighting the wall's tactical significance and visual drama. Modern filmmakers use drone shots, CGI, and wide-angle perspectives to capture its serpentine length and mountainous terrain. creating immersive experiences that transport audiences through time. International media has also adopted the wall as a narrative symbol. Documentaries highlight its engineering and cultural significance, while novels and graphic media explore its mythology, legends, and historical episodes. Even video games and animation feature imaginative reconstructions, blending fact with fantasy to reach global audiences. Through these representations, the wall transcends mere history. It becomes a storytelling device, symbolizing perseverance, strategic genius, and the enduring tension between human ambition and natural landscapes. The Great Wall also functions as a tool of cultural diplomacy. Governments, scholars, and international organizations leverage its iconic status to promote cross-cultural understanding, tourism, and heritage preservation. UNESCO recognition in 1987 further elevated its global profile, emphasizing the wall's universal value as a masterpiece of human creativity. Cultural exchanges, academic conferences, and international exhibitions highlight the wall's significance not only as an architectural wonder, but as a shared human achievement. It serves as a platform to discuss broader themes: engineering ingenuity, historical continuity, resilience in the face of adversity, and the ethical responsibility to preserve cultural heritage. The wall's presence in global discussions of heritage management exemplifies how a single structure can foster collaboration and dialogue across borders, inspiring a collective appreciation for history and human effort. Moreover, the wall influences global architecture, urban planning, and public art. Its design principles, adaptation to terrain, modular construction, and integration of function and aesthetics, are studied by architects worldwide. Its serpentine path through mountains and valleys continues to inspire designers, engineers, and strategists. In essence, the wall exists simultaneously as history, symbol, and living inspiration. It reminds the world of the capacity of human ambition to shape landscapes, create enduring legacies, and inspire generations across continents, centuries, and cultures. One of the most striking features of the Great Wall of China is its remarkable adaptation to some of the most challenging terrains on Earth. Stretching across jagged mountains, sheer cliffs, and steep valleys, the wall demonstrates the ingenuity of its builders in responding to extreme topography. Constructing and maintaining the wall in these regions was far more difficult than building on plains or rolling hills. In mountainous regions, particularly in Hebei, Shaanxi, and northern Beijing, the wall winds along ridgelines, sometimes perched precariously on cliffs hundreds of meters above valleys. Workers face the constant threat of falling, rock slides, and extreme weather. Materials had to be quarried locally or transported over dangerous passes using human and animal labor, often relying on pulley systems and rudimentary scaffolding. The walls had to be reinforced to withstand the movement of earth and stone, and careful planning was necessary to ensure that watchtowers were within signaling distance despite irregular terrain. The wall's mountainous construction was not only an engineering challenge, but also a tactical decision. By following ridgelines, defenders could maximize visibility, observe enemy movement, and utilize gravity as a defensive advantage. Archers stationed on elevated towers could target invaders in valleys below, while steep, winding paths slowed enemy advances. These design principles illustrate a sophisticated understanding of both geography and military strategy, reflecting the wall's dual function as both defensive fortification and adaptive engineering marvel. Yet even today, these remote mountainous sections are highly vulnerable. Erosion, landslides, and natural decay pose constant threats. Preservationists face the challenge of reaching these inaccessible stretches while maintaining historical authenticity. Modern equipment such as drones, 3D scanning, and aerial mapping has become essential in documenting and monitoring these fragile sections. But the work remains painstaking and dangerous, highlighting the enduring difficulty of protecting a structure that spans some of the most challenging landscapes on the planet. Beyond the mountains, the Great Wall stretches into the harsh deserts of Gansu, Ningxia, and Inner Mongolia, where sand, wind, and extreme temperatures create a different set of engineering challenges. In these regions, walls were often constructed with tamped earth rather than stone, because local materials were more readily available and easier to manipulate. While practical, this choice made desert sections particularly susceptible to wind erosion and shifting sands. Sandstorms frequently bury sections of the wall or erode their foundations, forcing repeated restoration efforts. Temperatures swing dramatically between scorching days and freezing nights, causing expansion and contraction of materials and contributing to cracking and instability. In some areas, the wall's outline is barely visible, blending into dunes, a testament to both the harshness of the environment and the impermanence of even monumental human efforts. Historically, builders had to innovate in desert construction. Layers of compacted earth were often reinforced with reeds, wooden frameworks, or stone facings where possible. Watchtowers were elevated to remain visible above shifting sands, and communication relied on beacon systems that could overcome vast, featureless expanses. Despite these innovations, desert sections were difficult to defend, and historical records indicate that nomadic invaders often exploited these stretches for raids, bypassing heavily fortified mountain passes. Today, conservationists face the dual challenge of protecting the wall against natural erosion while allowing the landscape to remain ecologically intact. Sand stabilization, controlled access, and periodic reinforcement are employed, but intervention is delicate. Too much restoration can erase historical authenticity, while too little risks complete loss. These desert stretches exemplify the fragile balance between environmental forces and human engineering, reminding us of the wall's vulnerability despite its monumental scale. Remote sections of the wall, whether in mountains or deserts, present some of the greatest challenges for modern preservationists. Inaccessible terrain, extreme weather, and centuries of neglect make it difficult to implement traditional restoration methods. Transportation of materials is often impossible by road, requiring helicopters, pulley systems, or manual labor. Additionally, preservationists must balance structural stabilization with historical authenticity. Modern concrete or steel reinforcement may stabilize walls, but risks altering the original design and materials. Technological advancements have become invaluable. Drones and satellite imaging provide detailed topographical maps, track erosion patterns, and identify vulnerable areas without risking human safety. 3D scanning allows precise reconstruction of damaged sections digitally before physical intervention. Materials analysis guides restorers in choosing historically accurate substances, such as traditional lime mortar or locally sourced stone, ensuring that repairs remain faithful to Ming or earlier construction techniques. In addition to environmental and logistical challenges, human impact continues to complicate preservation. Illegal brick removal, tourism pressures, and urban expansion threaten fragile remote sections. Education programs for local communities and controlled tourism initiatives help mitigate damage, but enforcement in sparsely populated regions remains difficult. Preservation is therefore a continuous, evolving effort, a dialogue between past and present, human ambition and natural forces. Ultimately, the wall's remote stretches highlight both the brilliance and vulnerability of this monumental project. They showcase the builder's ingenuity in overcoming natural obstacles while reminding us of the immense responsibility required to protect such a vast historical legacy. Through a combination of traditional techniques, cutting-edge technology, and careful stewardship, these sections continue to stand as a testament to human creativity and perseverance, even in the face of nature's relentless forces. The Great Wall of China stands as a monument to human ambition, perseverance, and ingenuity. Stretching over 13,000 miles, it has endured for millennia, silently witnessing the rise and fall of dynasties, wars, and the evolution of civilizations. Its construction demanded the labor of hundreds of thousands of workers, each contributing to a structure that was not merely functional but emblematic of human resilience against adversity. From the earliest walls erected by feudal states to the monumental reconstructions of the Ming dynasty, the wall has embodied the collective effort of generations. Soldiers, peasants, convicts, and engineers endured grueling labor, extreme weather, and harsh terrain to ensure the wall's completion. Every stone laid and every layer of tamped earth is a testament to human determination. Even the hardships, sacrifices, and countless lives lost are embedded within the wall itself, making it a silent chronicle of endurance, suffering, and ambition. Beyond its physical structure, the wall represents humanity's desire to shape the environment to meet collective goals. Its architectural brilliance demonstrates problem solving on a monumental scale, adapting to mountains, rivers, deserts, and plains, while simultaneously serving defensive, symbolic, and communicative purposes. The wall encapsulates the story of a civilization striving for security, identity, and continuity, reminding us that monumental achievements require vision, cooperation, and unwavering determination. As a historical artifact, the wall preserves not only the past, but the human story, our capacity to endure, innovate, and leave a lasting mark. It is both a barrier and a bridge, linking past, present, and future generations through stone, mortar, and memory. Its endurance challenges us to reflect on our own ambitions and the legacies we leave behind, inspiring a universal admiration for human perseverance and creativity. Throughout its existence, the Great Wall has transcended its practical purpose, becoming a symbol of cultural identity, spiritual reflection, and philosophical contemplation. In Chinese culture, it represents the blending of human ingenuity with the forces of nature, a tangible reminder that civilization is both fragile and enduring. Its serpentine path across mountains and deserts has inspired poets, philosophers, and artists, serving as a metaphor for life's challenges, human resolve, and the passage of time. The wall is deeply embedded in Chinese literature, folklore, and art. Tales such as Meng Jiangnu's legend transform it from a mere defensive structure into a vessel of human emotion, love, grief, loyalty, and sacrifice. Poets and writers have drawn inspiration from its endless stretches, reflecting on themes of isolation, ambition, and mortality. Visual artists have immortalized it in paintings, photographs, and films, portraying the wall as both a cultural icon and a dramatic landscape of historical significance. Its spiritual resonance extends beyond national borders. The wall embodies a universal message that human beings are capable of extraordinary feats when guided by vision, discipline, and cooperation. Travelers from around the world experience awe, reflection, and inspiration when standing upon its ramparts. The wall connects people across cultures and generations, reminding us of the shared human pursuit of endurance, purpose, and meaning. Its physical presence becomes a canvas for imagination, contemplation, and the eternal dialogue between humanity and the natural world. The Great Wall's enduring legacy lies not only in its stones, but in the inspiration it imparts. It is a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity, a reminder that even the most daunting challenges can be overcome through human collaboration and ingenuity. Its lessons extend beyond history and engineering into leadership, teamwork, and the perseverance of vision against obstacles. In the modern era, the wall continues to influence global culture, education, and preservation. Scholars study its construction techniques. Engineers draw lessons from its design, and cultural ambassadors use it to promote heritage and understanding. Tourists, students, and enthusiasts from every corner of the world engage with the wall as a living monument, not simply to admire its size, but to comprehend the human stories, struggles, and creativity it represents. Preservation efforts, from drone surveys to carefully executed restorations, ensure that the wall will endure for generations to come. Yet it is more than a relic of the past. It is a source of inspiration for the present and future. Standing on its ramparts, one can sense the sweat, skill, and devotion of countless builders across centuries, an enduring connection between history and the human spirit. Ultimately, the Great Wall of China teaches that greatness is built incrementally through determination, resilience, and shared effort. It reminds us that our lives, like its stones, contribute to the fabric of history. That even in the face of formidable challenges, human endeavor can leave a mark that withstands the test of time. As both a monument and a symbol, the wall endures, bridging the past and present, inspiring humanity to strive, create, and endure for generations yet to come. As we conclude our journey along the Great Wall of China, we are left with awe for the sheer scale of human ambition and perseverance. Today, we learned how centuries of labor, ingenuity, and determination transformed a vision into a reality that still inspires the world. We explored its mountains and deserts, its battles and legends, and its enduring place in culture and imagination. The Great Wall reminds us that even the most formidable challenges can be overcome through vision, collaboration, and resilience. It tells a story of sacrifice, strategy, and human creativity, a story that transcends borders and time, leaving lessons for all who encounter it. Thank you for joining History Teller YT on this incredible journey. If you were inspired by the wall's history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story that brings the past to life. The wall may stretch across China, but its story stretches across generations. And we'll be here to uncover more of history's greatest tales together. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and let History Teller YT guide you through the past, one story at a time.